Well, let's start with your thoughts about the value of music during this period of kind of unprecedented global fascism, chaos, and polarization.
Hmm. Uh, Boy, who wants to begin?
Well, let me jump in. I think it's more essential than ever, and I do feel that music and art is essential. Without it, this would be an even rougher time than it is. And not only does it make me feel better to do music and create music, but I think that that transfers to people that listen and it uplifts. And I just got back from the Big Ears Festival, and the amount of uplift and joy that happened, even in this moment in time, was really a wonderful thing to be a part of. So just got to be a part of that and see that and feel it, and it really does make a difference.
Yeah, I'll second that. I just got back from a European tour where I got to apologize on behalf of our country, and they were very appreciative. They're not judgmental against us, but they're very concerned. But they're also very grateful for music, and the appreciation of music seems better than ever, especially independent, non-mainstream, non-corporate music, of which PAKT is certainly the ultimate example of.
Let's hear from you, Kenny, and Percy too.
Uh, yeah, I would guess maybe just to maybe add like a tangential aspect to it, since covered some bases pretty succinctly. I think. Like I don't think we're going to get any pushback at the table right now. One thing I've noticed is it's kind of along the lines of what Alex is saying, where not so much. I mean, maybe mainstream is not the way I would put it. I would say starting to get affected by the weather right now. All these guys, but I would say that music that's happening in actuality, that kind of music, no matter what style or whether it's more simpler singer-songwriter, commercial rock stuff, or the most extreme, avant, forward-thinking, aggressive kind of stuff that's super dense. When there's this element of actuality behind it, where it's like these are musicians who are coming together and they're putting something forth that is genuinely their own, that they have ownership of, whether in their ability to execute, their ability to perform and be entertaining, or to do that more deeper, mystical, spiritual thing that music do, where you engage in the resonance, vibration, create that spin. That energy is like the most direly needed thing for above all else right now. And it's the one thing where even in the music world, it's starting to be suffocated by convenience of technology and the convenience of industry and keeping the machine moving forward. And even just on this tour and other tours, I'm seeing like bands that do it real, no matter how they do it, no matter what's going on behind the scenes or not, they're really doing it together. It does something to audiences that say when it's a really great show, but you can feel that the band's not really doing it together. They're doing it in other ways. They're kind of going through the motions of it. The audience just kind of pitters off. Everyone looks at their phones. They start doom scrolling. They start just drinking in. They start fucking off. They're not engaging. People do it for real. Like it does something to the human condition that I think is sort of lacking and missing, and intentionally so.
Any thoughts from you, Percy?
Yeah, well, I just got back from 110th Street with a cup of coffee. Um, I sense a lot of anxiety in the country right now, and I think that, like as Tim alluded to, that music can help with all that stuff. You take someone who's got any sense of anxiety, and they go to a concert, they hear some good stimulating music, it gets their mind off all the negative stuff. So I think music generally is a very positive thing for everybody. And I think especially music that and musicians are trying to break new ground and do something different, as opposed to the kind of tribute band music that's, pretty prevalent today. And it's kind of interesting. I was reading this morning, actually, Neil Young,
I read that.
who's dual US Canadian citizenship, I think. I mean, he's quite nervous about coming back into the country because he's been very critical for a while, so um, um, speaking for myself, I'm a resident alien, and I'm nervous. I had an experience like almost close to 50 years ago when my wife and I were being interviewed by immigration. And the immigration officer asked my wife, what was the color of your bed sheets on your honeymoon? And she said, that's none of your business. And that was obviously the wrong answer because the immigration lady took my passport and went bang, stamped the passport and said, you have to be out of the country by Thursday. And this was Tuesday, so 48 hours. So I left, but had I have stayed, I could have been deported, So I've got a sense of from that experience, which was years ago. I have a sense of what kind of stuff can happen to people, So it's negative stuff. That's all I can say. I don't like it. It's disappointing.
So
Back to you.
go ahead.
I was saying back to you.
All of you have myriad other bands and projects in parallel with PAKT. I'm curious, what makes this group a unique opportunity for each of you?
Well, I'll start for me. This is it's an opportunity to play with musicians that I don't normally cross paths with. Occasionally, Kenny, because Imperial and Testament will occasionally cross paths at festivals and stuff like that. But with Kenny and Percy, it was a totally new thing for me, and it just happens naturally. The improvisational component is very special. Not knowing what's going to happen. I've gotten used to the idea that we can walk out with zero preparation and it's going to be okay. It used to be a little a little bit of a bit nerve-wracking. Well, what's going to happen? I hope something happens. Every single time something happens, it's always good. Sometimes it is off the charts. And the way we were able to record all the shows, and we have albums, we have a catalog now, and there you go. And when we listen back to the music, it's fresh. It's like hearing somebody else play because we played it that night and it was very cool, but it's not something that was drilled in our heads at hours and hours of rehearsals. So it's a completely different experience, unlike any of the other projects I'm involved with.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Sure. Well, most of the bands that I've been involved in for quite some time have been improvising bands, and that goes back to Band at 65 with Kurt Rosenwinkel, and also my band Orion Tango, which is still active. And the idea of creating composition in the moment is the idea, really. And when this band started and Leo from Moonshine called us and said, how about this as a formation, you and Percy and Alex and Kenny? And I was like, I am in, because who knows where this band's going to go, right? And
Thank you, man.
Is over the years of playing together, I mean, really right from the first sound check, there was something that happened, and we all listen. There's an intention to the music, and something will happen because we have this chemistry in this band that's special. So I love it for that reason.
Absolutely.
That's true. Yeah, right. Right from the first moment.
Absolutely.
So you've, of course, got a new live album out. I'm curious how you feel it reflects the evolution of PAKT since it first formed.
Somebody
I
else
mean,
want
I think for sure. Sorry guys, I'm like handling a few things. You just made a quick pit stop at a Starbucks over here.
Ah,
So
awesome.
yeah. But yeah, I would say that oh, again, apologies. Like there's been a development, not just so much in like say like little motifs that maybe people are introducing into the improvs and concerts, but there's this language that's sort of been evolving over time that's really kind of manifested itself and become present in like the recent releases, especially this one that we
Yeah.
just came out. Like you can actually hear that there's I think all of us have had our own kind of connections and like say like Percy and I, we definitely have a certain kind of shared rhythmic language that came naturally from just years of doing Brand X together and just I think maybe some natural tendencies, but finding overlap in other ways of different musical instincts that we all kind of share and have in common. And it's really kind of starting to foster now. Like it's really apparent in these last releases for sure, like this compilation of all the recent concerts. Or even when somebody like Adam comes into the picture, it still feels like us. It doesn't turn into a different band all of a sudden. Like the core of the identity is still there.
Hmm.
Tell me a little bit more about having Adam on that album. Talk about his involvement and what he uniquely brings to the table when he works with you.
Guys,
Well,
sorry,
anyway,
Michael Bobby.
Yeah,
I'll
Tim,
just
Please take over from me.
we had a session in Rutherford for Progstock, and we were closing the show and sharing the night with Jane Getter at Premonition, which Adam is a part of. And after our sound check, Adam approached me and said, "Hey, what do you think about me sitting in tonight?" And it was just like, absolutely, please do it. And he popped on stage 20 minutes in and it was just like he's part of the band immediately, and it just worked. And because of that, Alex was touring with Testament, and we had a couple shows that were available to us. So Adam jumped in, and it truly is an amazing synchronicity that happens with him in the band. We share a language, and we all come from a particular period of time as well, and with our listening and Miles Davis and all these things that are there on the prog side of things. And he's a big fan of Percy and Brand X. So, all these kinds of factors really, really made it special. So we definitely enjoy playing with him.
And he's got the right initial.
He does.
perfect.
Hey.
Yeah, we
Please.
I think basically we're just trying to create an atmosphere, and it's sort of interesting for me because back in the 60s, I was living in Liverpool in England and was playing with a band there, which started out as a poetry and music band. So, you'd have a guy reading poetry, Adrian Henry. He's quite a well-known poet and painter. And then the bass stuff I'd be doing, a lot of it would be improvised. So I was just thinking about that the other day, that sort of come full circle because we're doing that with this band. I mean, there's nobody reading poetry, but we use some samples here and there. Which
I seriously just stretched for like 3 seconds and I bounced. It feels so much better.
Sorry, I missed that. So it's quite surprising, if you throw out a sample of whatever, how it can create an atmosphere.
Yeah.
And if you put the right music to it, it just enhances the whole thing. And I think for the punter who's sitting there listening, it can take them places, And back to the earlier point about the situation in the country right now, or in the world, it's a nice distraction, for somebody to go out and hear this stuff and get taken somewhere else for an hour or hour and a half or something.
Well, I'm
Yeah,
curious.
that's really where it is. I'll just piggyback on what Percy said a little bit. It's a journey. It's a musical journey, and I think yeah, the samples. It's sort of almost like an under um, exposed part of what we do. You know, we all talk about the instruments that we play, but Percy's samples bring this unique um, quality. Some of them are hilarious. He's got this Schwarzenegger one that's just very funny. So it sometimes provides comic relief, but it is like he's saying, it is like having a poet there that we then play around the poetry. And just to tie into the earlier question about why the live record is different. Yeah, we've really evolved, and I think we've yeah we there's these moments. Yeah, we learn to um what we learn to whether to play, whether to create textures, whether to support, whether to lay out, whether to start a song. I think just as we've played more and more together, you just get a sense of what's the right move at that time.
Yeah, good example of that actually was a Brown X gig not that long ago. I think it was a prog gig, and some lady in the audience was shouting and screaming. All I could hear was, couldn't hear, understand what she was saying, but she's going on and on. So I hit a sample of Joe Pesci going, "Shut that off," and it worked. She shut up. So I mean, that's not a typical. That's not a good example, I suppose, of what we do. But I thought I'd mention it.
Yeah, there's a insurance commercial jingle in there. And, yeah, it's all kinds of stuff.
Examples as crowd control.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm curious, how would you contrast what you capture on your live recordings to what you did with No Steps Left to Trace as a more studio-driven project?
Well, I mean, the very fact that we were in a studio and without an audience changed everything for me. And on that record, one of the interesting things, if you get the CD of No Steps Left to Trace, you have the full studio album, and then next to that, the other CD is live recordings from about a year later. So you can really hear how we have evolved in that period of time. But the thing about studio is it's there isn't an audience there, and we're improvising, and it's really just the four of us looking at one another and listening intently and trying to find the thing. I think for me, I prefer the live stuff the best because that's where we really shine. There's something about getting on stage and having to bring it, and it's really where the sparks happen, I think.
Yeah, and I would add that the audience, affects the performance a little bit.
Yes.
You have some audiences where they're very polite and deep listening, and then there's others where they're rowdy and they're enthusiastic and they're egging us on, and that affects it. But that first recording, yeah, it was just us on a stage, so it was streamed, so theoretically there was an audience, but we couldn't see the audience, and it was also still during the pandemic, so we were all wearing these thick masks. It definitely had a surreal artistic quality to it.
What can you tell me about the process of editing improvisations, for what you end up with on the records?
That would be a Tim question to start with that.
Yeah, usually, I approach it the same way I do with Bandit 65 or Ryan Tango, and it's kind of listening through all the material and then trying to find like, okay, the second piece from 5 minutes to 17 minutes is really good, and it's about finding a frame. Here's the beginning, here's an ending, here's a way in and out. it's that kind of thing. A lot of times also we'll talk amongst each other, or I'll send stuff to Percy, and Percy will like, oh, I like this piece, but I only like 2 minutes and 30 seconds of it or something like that. And we'll make a decision there and try to make that work. So it's really like I think it's personal taste as well. I'm going through and using my best judgment on stuff, and just finding a frame around the best stuff.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much down to, as Tim said, choosing the best of the material, listening to everything and then figuring out which is the strongest part of it. And then it's pretty much EQ, level, maybe a bit of limiting compression here and there, whatever. So sometimes a bit of reverb on the bass, depending on what's going on musically, and just getting a good mix. And then
Yep.
I'm trying to make it sound like the band sounded at the time, trying to get a good, accurate representation. And it's actually quite a big deal, I think, to go through all of that. I think it's well worth the time, even though, I mean, sometimes it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it pays off, I think.
Yes. No, I mean, there's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of recordings, and spending the time to go through all that is quite a feat in itself. But if you find a great recording, which isn't always the case, not all the live recordings are good. And when you do have a great night and it's a good recording, then we're truly blessed and we have something. And that's why this new record, I think, is also great, because we've evolved to a certain state, and also we have really good recordings and good mixes, and we spent time on the mixes and the mastering. So it turned out really nice.
Well, after doing this for so long, what makes a great night? What are some of the core elements that need to be there for a gig to be a memorable one that satisfies you all?
Well, one thing that's important is if everybody can hear each other, which implies, a good setup on the stage, the monitors being set up correctly. And when everybody hears each other easily, then the interplay is always better. And then, I mean, usually, but not always, that leads to a good performance, Then beyond that, it's just getting a good recording, with nothing having buzzes or snaps and crackles on it, or problems like that. And then, like we were saying earlier, then it's down to doing a good mix. But definitely, big priority there is a good sound on the stage.
Absolutely.
Really,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree. Hearing each other is the most important thing, because it's a very ambitious project to just go out there, and everybody's got these instruments. We're all capable of creating a lot of volume with our amps and the drums. But as long as there's a sense of listening, and I think we've gotten good at setting up and sort of making sure everybody can hear and we're comfortable, and every sound gets reacted to. Maybe it gets reacted to in silence, but it's with purpose, and it never gets to that point where it's just noise for the sake of noise, and nobody's sure what's going on. It really has a good uh, arc to it now whenever we play.
I think the best reaction I've ever experienced was in '69. I came over here to do a tour with Liverpool Scene, which is that music and poetry band I mentioned. And we did a gig in Kent State University, Ohio, opening for Sly and the Family Stone, which was a complete mismatch. as it turned out. But all we had to do was walk on the stage before we played a note, and everybody started laughing. Just the sight of the band was enough to get everybody laughing. We hadn't played anything at that point, so that's an extreme kind of irrelevant example, but I thought I'd throw it in there,
Thanks for that, Percy.
Awesome.
Well, I was wondering if each of you could give me a snapshot or give me some examples of things that go through your head when you're reacting in real time to one another on stage.
Hmm.
What's the inner dialogue you're having with yourself?
Complete panic.
Well, usually for me, like it's, we need to start at some point. And, Kenny and I had a thing that we did the last tour where we would put samples of crickets on our phones, and we would walk out to that sound. It was kind of like in place of a drone, and we would have that. He would have his by his microphone. I would have mine by my microphone, and there was something about that that gave us some kind of an aura of sound to begin in. And then we began, and we start making some sounds, whether that's me beginning or Alex or Percy playing a little bass solo, but we're all listening intently into that. And, in my mind, I'm just like, what can I do to help this along? Because really we're looking maybe for themes, or I'm looking for a thematic idea, something that allows an atmosphere that everybody can get involved in. And at some point, Kenny might bring some percussion in or rhythms. And quite often that gives me ideas immediately of what to play, and with Percy and Alex. And, we're off and running, but it's kind of that intense listening and feeling our way through, I think, in a large way.
Yeah, I think
I don't think verbally so much. I think I tend to hone in on melody, and it's a little bit like if I'm playing a blues, just to cite a simple type of form, I'll maybe sing an idea in my head and see if I can play it. I do a lot of the same things with PAKT, but instead of singing, notes that will fit a blues, it's so wide open. I'm also thinking different tones, different rhythms, different textures, and for those of us who own a lot of effects pedals, it can be a lot of fun because you get a chance to try so many different sounds. And I've honed it in on. There's a few that I'll use a little bit more often than not, but a lot of it is just imagining sound based on what everybody else is doing, and then trying to capture that both melodically on the instrument and texturally through the effects pedals.
Yeah, I think it's down to developing some kind of a theme. But then for us, it's also you're trying to look ahead, to turn the corner, to develop a theme,
Yeah.
then get out of it, and then move to something else. And you're also trying to be aware of dynamics, where you're just going up and down. To really think about keeping the whole thing moving, and ultimately how you're going to end it. Because there's always a danger that you get stuck. And that's one of the worst things that can happen with improv, is you get stuck in whatever it is and you can't get out of it. And then, the audience pick up on that, and they start getting bored. So, there's never a dull moment. You have to really keep thinking the whole time about what you're doing.
Kenny, what are your thoughts on this? And also, we should probably explain where you are right now. with your scenic footage.
Yeah, I feel like we're all on
Oh,
tour.
we are right. We are
No, I'm here at home in
the
Spanish.
Canadian border right now. Oh,
Okay.
Sorry, you just froze up. Could you
say
say
again,
that?
Percy?
Sorry, me?
Sorry.
I'm at home in Spanish Harlem, New York.
Where are you, Kenny, right now?
Oh yeah, no, I'm in we're west of Helena National Forest up in Montana. I don't know if you're able to hear that.
So going
Near
back,
Canada. Yeah.
going back to
We're headed. Say again.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on that question as well.
Oh, sure. I mean, in a way, my answer is going to kind of cover the previous question and this question. But the thing with improvised music is like whatever you bring to it as an individual, that's what you're bringing to it, and it's everything. So, without any sort of like, say, ritual aspect before getting into a state of making up something on the spot in front of a bunch of people for an extended period of time, you have to kind of create something that in its essence is sort of ritualistic to get everybody on the same page, the audience, the band members, because everyone's going to be coming in with their worries and their stress.
Does someone finish that sentence?
Frozen Kenny.
Yeah, sorry guys, we're deep in the mountains. I'm going to barely have signal, so I might be cutting out soon. But yeah, just creating something that's more ritualistic in its nature to get the focus on the moment. It's whatever thoughts or feelings or concerns or worries or other focuses that's not about that moment. Creating something like that where you can clear the thoughts for me is kind of paramount. So when you feel that everyone's out of their heads, they're really in that state of presence and listening and playing and interacting, then there's no worry, there's no fear, there's no doubt. It's just people being themselves together in unity. And I think people being able to express themselves together is something that's just like, that's where the magic shit happens. That's where those are the good shows, and all these other things that we talked about earlier is how you kind of get there. But I think it starts within. I think it's people going like, all right, I'm going in with all this baggage and all this fucking worry or whatever, anger or fucking frustration, and it's done now. Now we're here. And that really opens up the floodgates so that when people start reacting on stage, it's just fun. It's not like, fuck, this sounds weird, or fuck, this is a little awkward. It's like people that are in their heads too much, that's where the awkward shit happens.
Yeah.
So it's nice to get to this place where it's like now there's also, because of this language thing that's happening, there's a trust that's there. So if somebody's feeling a little awkward, maybe all three other people are going to be right there, arms open, ready to catch that person. And that's again, like, bearing witness to something like that live is really good. People need to see examples of a band like holding it together.
Yeah.
That actually, and that feeling that camaraderie, then it just makes the performance stronger. Like people get into it more. So it's like those factors really key into what makes like a great show versus like, oh, that was really good. We had a lot of fun, or it was really tight. Where it's like, no, something happened where people were really in it.
So Percy, you mentioned getting stuck. When any of you do get stuck, or whenever you feel like something might be going a little bit off the rails, how do you get things back on track?
Wow, that's
Immediate change.
a good question.
Immediate change. Master to it. No, when something's gone.
Didn't catch that, Kenny.
Well, Kenny seems to be stuck in the mountains at the moment. Why don't, when Kenny comes back, let's have him continue. He's back. Do you want to continue with that, Kenny? You dropped out.
Sure. Yeah, I was just saying that Percy is the master of knowing when to cut things off. And we've gotten to a point in recent years where he really has a sense of like, okay, things are kind of stuck and have been meandering too long. He makes an immediate change. And that's the thing that can shake those moments up is immediate change, not allowing one to get lost in their meander. Because again, being lost in the meandering is really that person being lost in their thoughts, lost in their, oh, this doesn't sound good, or, oh, I'm really into this thing that I'm doing, but I'm not really listening to what's happening around me, or whatever the thought is. The thought is not focused on everybody else. It's focused on the thought. And Percy he feels it and he goes, all right, I've had enough. And he just gives one of his big chords, or he drops in a sample, or he does something, and immediately it makes us change. He makes the change. And sometimes you need a noise to really make that change. It really makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And sometimes when we're all really on, the four of us as a team, and we're moving through, we don't get hung up at all. It's just the changes are naturally occurring. The sound is great in the room, and we're just moving through it. Maybe we've had a great meal that night for the first time in 4 days. These kinds of things really affect us. And we have a wonderful show. And it's just like, wow, that was like effortless. There are other nights where it's not effortless. Maybe there's 2 or 3 of us that feel like we're pulling, but we eventually blow that up with some kind of musical sabotage and get to a nice place, so.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. Percy is definitely the foundation, and knowing when to shift gears helps change things for all of us. Uh, Personally, if I feel stuck, it's easy enough to make a change. Sometimes that's just laying low for a while, not playing as much, or swapping instruments. Um, Tim and I have more than one instrument. Tim usually has a couple more than me, but I always have at least 2 guitars. So it might be changing the guitar or changing the tone or making some kind of change. But if there is ever a sense of getting stuck, it doesn't last too long.
Yeah, well, sometimes you can do it just by choice. Speaking from a bass point of view, sometimes you can do it with a choice of notes. Sometimes you can literally be loud, confident, and wrong, and just hit something really loud and obnoxious, and probably from the textbook point of view, completely wrong, but it works, or sometimes I'll just stop playing. I mean, there's instances in the music where sometimes it doesn't need any bass. It sounds better without any bass, so I'll just stop for a while and just listen. So I mean, speaking for myself, I don't have any preconceived ideas of how to keep it rolling. It's just spur of the moment, sort of,
Yeah.
act on the moment, so to speak.
Right. Well, Alex and Tim, I thought we could explore how you both complement and support each other as co-guitarists, and also how you keep out of each other's way.
Alex?
Yeah, well, I've never felt a sense of us stepping on each other before, and that's very rare with multiple guitar situations. And I've been in a lot of dual guitar situations. Yeah, that it often has to be carefully worked out, and there's a lot of trial by error. And yeah, I don't know, somehow, yeah, I think it goes back to a little bit of what Percy was saying, just about listening.
Hmm.
I think there's just so much listening between us that we have different palettes of sound. I don't
Yeah.
think we ever really copy each other in terms of sound, and we know each other's sounds. We know how to sort of complement each other, and yeah, it's just a matter of listening and knowing. Okay, if he's doing that sound, I'm going to do this. I think this will work with his sound, and it seems to work itself out very naturally.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, of course, we're both Libras.
Yeah, diplomatic.
We both do have different voices in the band as guitar players. And where I'm coming from is guitar synth, and textural stuff, primarily creating atmosphere, but I also am a melodic guitarist as well and can rock as hard as anybody else can. But, you know,
Absolutely.
the fact that we both respect one another's playing and can really listen, and it's kind of like painting. I look at it like painting, you know, it's like putting some undercoat there, and Alex might be out on a solo just destroying, you know, and having the right sounds underneath that to help the music. So it's always with that intention, like feeling it, not really thinking about it so much, but just feeling what where the music's going really is great. So, you know, I really feel like we're a great front line, and most of the people that I've talked to that have heard us are like, wow, it's amazing to see a double guitar band like this that works so well, so complementary. So cheers
Yeah,
on that.
I sometimes feel like we're keyboardists, especially Tim. And there's, yeah, we have these. I'm not comparing us to Korea and Jarrett, but yeah, we have these Miles at the Fillmore moments in a way where it's like, you know, these sort of rock keyboard sounds, especially Tim because he's got the whole guitar synth element, and it just works really well. And yes, I originally come from a type of guitar that's screaming, crunchy guitar, and I still have that, but I have a lot of other textures as well. But Tim has those references too. We can talk about Iommi and Sabbath, and he knows that, and so yeah, we know each other, a lot of each other's references too, which I think helps.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny and Percy, I was wondering if you could explore the difference in locking in together as a rhythm section in PAKT versus perhaps what you used to do in Brand X. How is it much different?
Um, well, that's another tough one to answer, but every drummer is different, and I think I can mostly recognize a good drummer, or more accurately, it's a drummer that I think I can work with. Um, that's the first thing that happens. But then when you start playing together, it takes a little time to get used to the language that this particular drummer uses, because they're all different, you know. Um, so it takes a little time, and then you develop a rapport, and there are things that will work with one drummer that won't work with another drummer, and vice versa. So, um, but I mean, ultimately, for it to work as a rhythm section, uh, you have to have that two-way back and forth. You have to be able to react to what he's doing or she's doing, and they have to be able to react to what you're doing, so that you both develop some kind of a vocabulary. But I've been lucky. I've been able to play with several very good drummers, going back to the 60s actually.
What's your view on this, Kenny?
Did that make sense?
And yeah, definitely. Made a lot of sense. I mean, Anil, I would say personally, for me, it's like, on the one hand, it's the same kind of thing that Percy's, speaking live to, where it's like, yeah, with any musical relationship, you have to kind of learn each other, and that happens over time. With some people, the connection happens very quickly. With others, it happens gradually over time. But put in the time, it's going to happen. It's just that click just kind of falls into place. But for me, it's I mean, I grew up of a fan of Percy. My most of my childhood and life, I was like listening to his music and projects and bands he was involved with as a sideman or as a as the main person or his own personal projects. My dad was a big fan of his work, so it's like there's all that other internal elements of like exposure from this other side, whereas like Percy ain't never heard a damn thing I did except for like he saw me play a couple of times at Sing Bar with with Felix's band back in the day with Hipster Assassins. So it's a different kind of relationship. I'm a total stranger who he doesn't have much of a connection to. Whereas for me, it's like, oh, this guy is a huge inspiration musically for me. Always was somebody who I admired and just loved their playing and loved their records and music. So there's a different slant on it. So you're personally, you have to, and people that are in that similar kind of position, you have to then kind of sort of do your like work-life balance as a musician. You have to kind of understand like what you're bringing to the table and who you are as a musician and a creative, but you also then have to understand, well, where is the music coming from? Where are the players involved coming from? Take into account how you want to then approach your phrasing, your feeling, and then from there kind of develop this language so that, but at least with like say with Brand X, like I didn't 100% play anything like the records or like the live bootlegs or do that super hyper detail thing, but you could feel I can easily say you could feel that like the essence of understanding where the music was composed from and the feeling that it should have was there. So sort of the intention was intact, if maybe not 100% of the drum beats were accurate. Because I'm more concerned with like, well, Percy's in a different place in his life, so it's good Saul. And then here's these other two guys, right? So this is a new band. There's a little wiggle room to like develop a new kind of rapport with this guy. And that was kind of a fascinating thing to do, to then jump to PAKT, where it's like, oh, just do whatever the fuck we want. Who's just us without a yoke? Who's us without a script? What do we do when there aren't any fucking rules or we don't have to anything but musically brought us way, way closer together, where stuff that would happen here and there on a Brand X show now that's just a foundation for the kind of, rhythm section stuff we're applying to this band that could then allow Tim and Alex to do their shit on top, whether they want to create tapestry, whether they want to like go toe to toe, whether they want to do whatever it is they want to do, go ambient, like the space is there because now this sort of like rapport is built up. So it's kind of cool to get to experience that. It's a rare thing to get to kind of go through that as a musician. So it's sick. I'm into it.
Good description.
I'm also really into these views, guys. I'm sorry, bro, but this shit is like,
Wow.
Yeah, it's like we're right there in the van.
yeah, man. This is.
But thankfully, you can't smell it.
Oh no, you can't. We run a tight, clean ship in this dojo, man. Like this band, not fuck around. We are clean as fuck. Don't get it twisted. It's Imperial for a reason.
That could be a good PAKT album name, Clean as Fuck. Or not. You all have expansive listening habits. I'm curious if there are any other improv focused groups that you would recommend people check out.
Yeah.
I mean, Kenny, you're literally in like 10 of them.
He's in there.
Yeah, but that would be kind of like thing. It's
Wow. How come?
music
There you
is machined. Oh yeah, I'm probably cutting out, guys. I'm like low battery or low data.
Someone else want to take a shot at it, and we'll get back
No.
to you in a second.
Middle of Montana.
I think over the years, there's been so many. Going back to Miles, who we mentioned earlier, like his electric period was hugely influential on me. I mean, I love like Dark Magus and Pangea and all those records of that period of time. Also jumping forward, hurtling forward into a band like Super Silent. Love that band and what they're doing. And as a guitar, Fred Frith, everything that Fred Frith does, I love. And I've seen him live a few times. Very impactful and to see him play. There's so many, really. It's like the ECM catalog alone. What's
Absolutely.
on.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
listen to a lot of ECM myself.
Yeah. And
Ellie Sharp, who was at one of our shows, which was a big honor.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. I forgot about Elliot Shaw. Yeah. I played with him a little bit. Yeah.
You did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his stuff um, is really adventurous.
Yeah, I love Elliot.
Anyone else want to make a few recommendations for people to consider?
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
You hear you.
Okay, yeah, sweet. Yeah, sorry, it's the it's just dipping in and out of data reception. Yeah, I mean, I maybe not to shout out just specific bands, but there's definitely I'm seeing a movement more and more in a lot of styles of music where there is more improvising incorporated, whether it's free or structured improvising, whatever. It's just people just doing shit for 5, 10, 15 minutes in their set, regardless of what they do. It's becoming more and more and more of a thing.
It is.
So like even like some of the guys that are involved with like this like Jazz from Hell series that guys from Kilter have been running with James, a ton of bands. So I'm like Sarmat, all these things. But it's more where it's, whether it's rock or metal or whatever style, there's some element of this like improvising that's getting in the music. Even some punk shit where it's like, again, names escape me, but I feel like this is gonna start incorporating itself more and more into music as people kind of get over the like near perfection of everything being a gridded showcase every time. Like it'll get like fast food. It'll just get like the redundancy of the flavor of it being too much the same will eventually tire out the listener. They're gonna look for these experiences from. It seems like even in other where it's like you've been thinking improvising. It seems like some of these guys do. So it's everywhere. It's coming back into music, I guess, maybe.
Yeah, it totally is. And also, like we go back to the Grateful Dead and Fish and things like that, the jam band scene and all the things that have came out of that. But like even here in Philly, there's some guys that are out of that scene. Now they call their nights improvising nights, and they're really pushing that as an improvising thing, not a jam band thing. It's like interesting to see that change up. And there is so much improvising that's happening live now, right down to solo artists who are doing looping and stuff like that. We see it everywhere now.
Yeah, I'll just add one more guitar player. The Norwegian guitarist Terje Rypdal, Terjeyrypdal, who for some reason he's practically a household name in Europe, but not that well known in the U.S. I'm constantly mentioning his name to guitar players on this side of the pond that have never heard of him, and
he's great.
Fantastic.
Yeah, he's great.
And I'm pretty sure he influenced a lot of big players too. Like I hear things that David Gilmour and Jeff Beck played that he's doing in like 1970. Yeah.
Steve Hackett even.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there seems to be a bit of a reluctance now of promoters, to book anything that smacks of improv, which is a bit disappointing.
Talk about that a little more. How does that impact PAKT's ability to get out there on the road?
Well, probably quite a bit. Leonardo, who books quite a lot of stuff. I mean, he's complaining that a lot of venues gave it a thumbs down, probably because it's improv. And they just have this idea that it's noodling or whatever, I don't know.
I don't know. I think the venues and the curators that are hip and are willing to take a risk, because this is risk music and people have to take a risk to have us. And, it's like when you go back to like all the great Blue Note albums or Impulse records, those people were taking risks on those artists. There was no like, this is definitely going to work. It's like, let them go out and develop and see what will happen. And I think, we're finding some of those promoters now. equally, I feel like we need to get onto some festivals so people can really hear us, and that's how you break a band, really, is to get on festivals. And if we could do that, I think we would blow up a little bit. I really do.
I agree. Um, I know we're focused on PAKT, but I'll just say from the tour I just did with my own trio, we played some venues we've been trying to get into for many years, like Porgy and Bess in Vienna and the Tritone in Paris. Yeah, the established jazz venues, and yeah, they're scared because of my background. They think I'm going to show up with like a wall of amps, like Angus Young, and there's going to be crowd surfing, and no, it's actually a legit jazz adjacent, delicate project, and they're so happy once they have us. And I think we've experienced the same thing with PAKT. There's promoters that have taken a chance on it, and it goes great, and then they get it. So we just have to get our foot in the door. I think everybody that's had us is very happy with us. There's places that want us back. The challenge is getting PAKT into new places.
Yeah.
But we just got a list of some shows from Leonardo, so it does look like he's making some progress. Fingers crossed.
It all reminds me a little bit of decades ago when A&R guys at record companies, some of them would take big chances on signing up unknown bands and put some faith into it. And then later on, it became more, they'd sign up a band that sounded like a band that was already out there and successful. They stopped taking chances. And, maybe the clock has gone full circle. I don't know. But I see a sort of parallel between, it's just they're playing it safe to some degree. And like Tim said, you've got a few of them that they'll stick their neck out and they'll take a chance on it, which is great. I hope to see more of that.
Yeah. And we are playing a music of now, like right now. And there's something very important about that in this moment that we're all in, that we can, let that kind of music be expressed and come through us. It's like everything we're feeling, when we play, it does come through us, and it's uplifting and very helpful to everybody that hears it. So hope to do a lot more.
Express, that's the word. Yeah. It is expressive, and there's much to be expressed in this day and age, especially post January 2025.
Yes.
Looks like we've lost Kenny here. I was going to put you all on the spot with the next question. We'll just have to do it with the three of you. Let me get you to each pick a band member and have you tell me something about them nobody has ever heard before.
That's a funny question. God, I have to think about that.
Kenny has a pre-show ritual that I won't go too deeply into, but it is a ritual that he does every night before we go on stage, right after dinner. And I always like to hang nearby because it also calms me down just to see him like totally focused in the zone because he's preparing his mind. He's settling himself down and getting ready to go play for 2 hours. And it's great to witness that every night.
Yeah. I picked Kenny as well, but sorry, but it's too good. Kenny is the king of breakfast. He researches every place we go. He finds a good place for breakfast. A good breakfast is really important. He compares the reviews, and it's very selective. It's not the nearest place for breakfast. It's not the Waffle House. So he finds a place that is good quality, and we can all count on him, not just to keep time, but to keep us well fed first thing in the morning.
You got anything, Percy?
Well, I can't think of anything except what Alex was just saying. Uh, Kudos to Kenny's on the road research with places to eat. I mean, it's almost always, he almost always finds a good place.
Yeah.
Food at a decent price. So, and that's a big deal when you're on the road. You don't want to start a day with a shitty breakfast somewhere. Everybody wants to have a good, enjoyable, nutritious breakfast because that sets you up for the day. So that's a big deal to me. So I'll back that one up.
So one of you's got to have something about someone else on the screen right now.
Let's see.
I have one.
Okay.
I like and really enjoy hanging with Percy after gigs, usually by the time we get back to a hotel. And the adrenaline's still flowing, so we need some time to chill. So we'll chill in one of our rooms and have a glass of wine. And I always appreciate that because we always chat about the music, talk about the music or what happened that night. And then quite often we'll get back to like stories about John Hassel or Brand X stories or, things like that. Lots of things, Brian Eno stuff, things that I never knew about. And Percy, you would tell me these things while we're chilling down, and always enjoyed that.
Yeah, I'm amazed by the stories that we get from Percy. Yeah, stories of these Brian Eno sessions where there's a bicycle involved and um bubbles. I forget the exact details, but this one Brian Eno session that was just insane. It was like a circus, and yeah, and I'm a Brian Eno listener too, and there were these records I didn't realize who was playing bass. This great bass part would come on, and it's Percy, and it's a really cool thing to have that lineage that he brings.
Well, since we have you here, this is a packed interview, but now that you've talked about Brian Eno and bubbles and bicycles, I think everyone watching this is going to want to know what the hell are you talking about? So, Percy, tell us what that's about.
Well, I did numerous sessions with him. Sometimes it was just the two of us, and he was completely unorthodox in the way he worked, which is great for me. I thought there were several examples of his unusual way of working. One of them I remember, which Alex alluded to, was Eno wrote down on a piece of paper 1 to 100, and then next to each number he wrote like C sharp number 1, then 2 would be B, and so on and so on. And then he started a metronome to keep the time. So I'm going, 1 F sharp, boom, boom, boom. And we got up to about number 10. And Phil Collins, there was a bicycle on the far wall in the studio. So Phil Collins ended up, instead of playing time, just throwing plastic bottles at the bicycle across the other side of the room, trying to hit the bicycle in time with a metronome. So I think we got up to like number 12 and gave up on it. So, it's just an example of, the crazy stuff that Eno got up to, Another one would be a tape loop that went completely around the room. So I showed up one day for a session, and somebody said, "Percy, watch your head." So I ducked, and there was a tape like going just below the top of the door. So I ducked and walked in, and they stuck pencils in the corner of the room to guide the tape. So this tape loop was probably 70 feet long, going right around the room. So it's just a couple of examples of what Eno used to get up to. I loved it, all of it, very inspiring stuff to play on,
Kenny, do we have you back? Can you hear us?
I think so. Seems like I can hear you.
All right, all these guys have been talking trash about you for the last 5 minutes. And the question was, pick a band member and tell us something about them nobody has ever heard of before.
Okay. Shit. Wish I was thinking about this while I was on pause, but goddamn. Oh, I guess I don't know. I feel like you know that. And everybody already answered this question. I don't got time to think about this.
Everyone's already answered, yeah.
God damn it. You guys are throwing me under the bus here. I mean, I guess would people actually know that like Percy's like actually has like a post grad in like mechanical and electrical engineering? You know that?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Oh, Percy has like a postgraduate degree in mechanical and electrical engineering. Like the guy built his own candy machines. He's built his own lightning detectors, radiation detectors. He dabbles in shortwave communication globally. I mean, that's what he does in his spare time. He just wants to chill out. He does science and shit. I don't know if many people know that. It's pretty badass.
I think they're talking about the lightning detector. I think the first version didn't pick up any lightning, but it would go off every time somebody put a key in the door in the hotel. Was happening?
I think that was on one of the Brand X stores.
Yeah.
Oh, and ham radio. I didn't even know what ham radio was until I got in this band and I found out Percy's one of these ham radio guys and sort of enlightened me to the whole world. I've since heard much more about it, but
Okay. Good example of that was several years ago. I had a dog called Sparky, and one afternoon I heard the dog barking and barking in the other room where I had my radio gear. So I walked in, and the dog is sitting in front of the bench where the radio is, and he's looking up at the transmitter, and he's just barking. And then he stopped barking, and I heard a guy in Germany saying, coming out of the radio saying, "I hear a dog barking." So I realized that I'd left the Vox switch engaged on the radio, so that to transmit you just talk. You don't have to press a button. You just talk, and the transmitter turns on. So the dog was actuating the transmitter and barking, and this guy in Germany was hearing this dog barking in New York. So I thought that was a
Some
good
of the
one.
mischievous shit that he gets up into with his technology escalates. Some of many.
All right. Well, last question for you. Well, tell me what the future holds for PAKT with specific activities coming up and also where you would like to take this long term.
I think we just
go ahead.
Percy, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any like definitive plan. I think we're just hoping we can keep it going and develop it. I mean, make it better. And I mean, hopefully that will lead to more work. I think we need more exposure, basically.
Yeah.
I think it's got potential.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the more we can play, the more this develops, and we're already talking more about developing ideas that are composed. So we put some composition along with the improvisation into the band, but also like with that exposure, getting on festivals. I think that needs to be a focus, as well as getting out of this country and getting into Europe and Japan and places like that, and England. I think this band needs to get over there too. So that's some of my hopes.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. We flirted with the idea of exploring some composition ideas, as well as keeping up the improvisation. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential for us. Just getting in front of more ears, certainly outside of the U.S. and in front of some larger audiences. Yeah, a lot of people I think don't know that how much they would appreciate what we're doing, and if it's done in front of a bigger audience, there's a lot of potential.
And you have a tour coming up.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll be in early July. We'll be heading up the Northeast corridor and eventually getting into Canada, and we'll be playing Montreal and Toronto and Quebec City and some other places there.
That's
And
if the borders are still open. So.
yeah, and we'll see if we can get back in. I don't know, but
Yeah, right.
yeah, and I think right now it's about 11 shows, and that's going to be announced soon. A couple dates have been announced as of yesterday, but we should be seeing an announcement from Leonardo pretty soon too, from Moon June.
All right. Well, that is all I had for you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time, and
Thanks, Anil.
thank you for
Thanks,
doing it.
Anil. Yeah, it's good to do this.
Thank you very much, Anil.